Next step is to start laying the pavers, but we need to make sure before we start laying that the pavers are in a straight line. In order to do that, I tied a string to a stake on this side, put in a leveler just to get an idea of the level of the string. As you see, it's sloping this way, and the other end of this string goes to a stake over here. Now I have a straight line as a reference to start laying my pavers. Couple of things to check is to make sure that the distance between the string and the wall is same on either side. On the other end, on this side, I kept it about 35 inches, and the distance from the string to the fence or the other side should also accommodate 48 inches, which is my planned length towards the fence. This is my first stone that I've laid, and I've see parallel to the string, and I'm going to use this string to lay the rest of the stone. One thing I did is used my table saw to cut off maybe about 1/8 wood strip. I'm going to use this strip to basically use it as a spacer to lay the next one in, because you need that space to put the filling sand in later on. If it's butted together, there won't be enough space for the filling sand to enter, as well as act as a binder or a glue between the stones. So you need that space, like so. Once I put the paver in, I'm gonna take the spacer out and use it for the next one. The way I put the pavers in is I put the spacer in first, then I lay the new paver in, sort of line up with one end, and then just lay it in. Once I lay it in, I do some adjustments to make sure that I line up with the string, line up with the pavers, the other side of the paver, and also make sure I line up with the spacer in between. And there you go. That's my first line of pavers. It took me about 15 minutes. One advantage of the spacer I didn't realize now is because if you keep a spacer, not only like I said, it allows for the sand to the binding sand, the polymeric sand to bind, give it some space to bind, but also with space like this, you can make adjustments in the second row. If somehow the first row is crooked, there's enough space to make adjustments in the second row without anybody noticing. In other words, if there is any error in this line, the error will not propagate to the second, third, and fourth row. You have enough space in between to correct any errors if there is any error on this line, because of the spacer, because of the space we put between the two pavers. Now I'm ready to lay in the second row of the pavers, and obviously I need to remove this pipe. I'm gonna just take this pipe with my finger and very gently just simply slide it out without disturbing the sand as much as I can. And the trench that is left over, I am just going to fill it up with the sand, my leftover sand, with hand. And like so, I'm gonna just take this flat trowel, I think this is called, and use it to fill in the trench that I left while removing the pipe. I laid the second layer of pavers. I'm almost done with the second layer. Two things to remember is to one, that I have to step on these. We lay one layer, then I step on these to build the second layer, then I step on the second layer to build the third layer. I do not step on the sand, of course, because that's going to disturb the flatness. The second thing to remember is, as I step on it and walk on it, I have to make sure I walk carefully and not walk fast or with too much pressure on it, because as we walk and we twist the feet, the pavers get twisted too. So I have to step on carefully and try not to twist my feet as much as possible. I use the same spacer to lay the second. Use the same spacer to space it from my first layer, my first level, as well as the same spacer for the side-by-side space. And there it is. I finished laying all the pavers but one. The only one left is where the water pipe is coming out, and I need to take that paver and cut it off, maybe a hole or a rectangle piece, so the pipe can come out and I can fit that paver in. And laying the pavers is done. The last step is to reinforce the edges and to put sand in the spaces to make it stronger. Next, I'm gonna use this edging to keep the pavers in place, and I'm gonna use this Gator Max polymeric sand. This is fine sand made for gaps of this distance, about 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch gap. And before I put the edging in, because if I try to put the edging now and try to put the stakes in, it might move my pavers. So I'm going to put the sand in first, at least in the middle part, so the pavers don't move that easily, and then I'm going to put the edging in. I'm using a broom to sweep the sand into the gaps as much as I can. I think I put too much sand. Once I have a bunch of sand on the top, I also tamp it in with a tamper to push as much as I can into those gaps. I finished one side of the edging. Now that I am thinking back, I should have dug maybe about 3 inches more than my patio required size, so that the edging would have been easier. I had to dig a little bit to get the edging in. But one side is done, and probably do the other two sides, and then when I'm done with the edging, I'm going to take the rest of the polymeric sand and sweep it into this gap of the edging too. That way there's a strong support for the polymeric sand as well as for the pavers. Now you can see the polymeric sand very nicely falling into the gap between the edging and the stone. It's going to help keep the pavers in place. I filled in all the gaps between the pavers and between the edger and the paver too, as much as I can. Any extra sand I just put it over the edge line over here, because it's going to be, that edge is not going to be seen. And I'm pretty much done. I just have to spray water on this to harden it overnight, I hope. Thanks for watching.